It was Christmas morning. The fire was crackling, the presents were tucked under the tree, and the whole house smelled like pine and cinnamon. I remember thinking how perfect it all was. It was a scene I'd spent my entire adult life trying to create, this perfect picture of family and happiness. But then my son, my Leo, looked me right in the eye and said the 6 words that just shattered my entire world. "You are no longer family." Then he just turned, walked to his room, and I heard the click of the lock. He left me with nothing but a roaring silence and the ghost of a story of how we ended up here. That click of the lock, it sounded like a gunshot in a quiet house. My husband, Mark, was standing by the fireplace, a coffee mug in his hand, completely frozen. "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" was still playing softly from a speaker on the mantel, a sick joke of a soundtrack for my life falling apart. For a second, nobody moved. The air felt thick, like I couldn't breathe. I just stared at his bedroom door, this simple, white-painted door that had just become a fortress wall between me and my son. I took a shaky step, my hand reaching out like I could somehow undo it all just by touching the wood. "Leo," I whispered. My voice was this dry, cracking thing. "Leo, please, open the door. Let's just talk." Nothing, just Frank Sinatra and the crackling fire. Mark finally moved, putting his mug down with a clatter that sounded deafening in the silence. "Clara, just give him a minute," he said, his voice low and tight. He put a hand on my shoulder, but the touch felt a million miles away, like it was happening to someone else. A minute, I turned to him. The tears I didn't even know I was holding back started spilling, hot and fast. "A minute? Mark, did you hear what he said?" He said I wasn't. He said I couldn't even say the words again. It felt like poison in my mouth. Saying them again would make it even more real. I just sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, my whole body feeling heavy and useless. The presents under the tree, which looked so happy a few minutes ago, now they just felt like they were mocking me. There was a big, awkwardly shaped one for Leo right at the front, a new keyboard for his music, something he wanted for months. I was so excited to see his face when he opened it. Now the bright red paper felt like a shroud. The silence from his room was an active, angry thing. It was an answer. It was the sound of 22 years of being a mother getting erased. I dropped my head into my hands, and the sobs just came out in these ragged, ugly gasps. How did we get here? How does a mother become a stranger in her own home on Christmas Day of all days? To understand how a perfect Christmas morning could just shatter like that, we have to go back, not just a few weeks, but years. And if I'm being brutally honest with myself, it all started with the silences. Not the loud, angry silences after a fight, but the quiet, creepy ones that fill up the spaces where conversations used to be. It started when Leo was a teenager. I told myself his distance was just a normal part of growing up, but I see now. It was something more. It was him slowly, brick by brick, building the wall that stands between us now. A wall made of unspoken resentments and things I just didn't understand. From the outside, we look like the perfect family. Mark has a good job. We have a nice house in the suburbs, and I was a dedicated stay-at-home mom. I was the class mom, the field trip chaperone, the one who baked all the birthday cakes. I saw my job as being the architect of my son's happiness. I planned his life with the same detail that I planned my garden, thinking that if I just gave him the right conditions, he'd bloom into this amazing man. I thought this was love. I'm only just now starting to see that for him. It might have felt like control. The first real crack in the foundation showed up when Leo was 16. It was about his future. I'd always pictured him following in his dad's footsteps in a business degree, something safe and secure. One night, I brought home a stack of brochures from fancy business schools and spread them out on the dining table. I thought we could look through these this weekend, I'd said, smiling. It's never too early to start planning. Leo glanced at them. His face was a blank slate. He was holding his beat-up acoustic guitar, the one he saved up for 2 summers to buy. I'm not interested in business, Mom, he said. His voice was quiet, but it was firm. I just laughed. Oh, honey, nobody's interested in business. It's a means to an end. It's about building a secure future. My future? He shot back, his eyes finally meeting mine. Were the one you planned for me. That stung, but I just pushed the feeling away. I was his mother. I knew what was best. That's not fair, Leo. Everything I do for you. I just want you to be happy. What if what makes me happy isn't what you think of as successful? He asked. He wanted to do music, not as a hobby, but for a living. To me, that sounded like a one-way ticket to a life of struggling. We argued. It wasn't a yelling match. Not back then. It was this tense, frustrating debate. I saw a starving artist. He saw a sellout. I saw a loving mom protecting her son. He saw a dictator crushing his dreams. I ended it by telling him that his music was a wonderful hobby, but it was time to be realistic. I thought I was winning. I thought I was setting a sensible boundary, but all I did was teach him that his deepest passions weren't safe with me. After that day, he stopped playing his guitar in the living room. He'd wait until he was in his room with the door shut. That was the real beginning of the silences. The gap between us got wider when he went to college. He didn't go to one of my business schools. He chose a state school a couple of hours away. It was a compromise, but it felt like a loss to me. That first year was tough. I missed him like crazy, and I tried to bridge the distance with daily phone calls and care packages. I thought I was being supportive. Now I realize he probably felt like he was being watched. Then came Sophie. He mentioned her on a call in the spring of his freshman year. I've been hanging out with someone, he'd said, and there was this new lightness in his voice. Her name is Sophie. She's in the music program. She's really cool, Mom, and not a something. Cold and unfamiliar tightened in my stomach. It wasn't exactly jealousy. It was a feeling of being replaced. This Sophie, this girl I'd never met, was now part of his world. A world I wasn't the center of anymore. I know how that sounds. It sounds selfish, and maybe it was, but I disguised it as concern. Music program. I'd asked, my tone a little, to sharp, is she a serious student? What are her grades like? There was a pause. She's a person, Mom, not a transcript. I like her. That's what matters. The first time he brought her home for Thanksgiving was a disaster, and it was all my fault. I see that now. At the time, I was just nervous. Sophie was beautiful in an artsy, unconventional way, with a small nose ring and some tattoos. She was polite, but I saw everything about her as a symbol of the life I was afraid of for him. She was the music, the instability, the detour from my plan. I wasn't mean, not out loud. I'm a master of the subtle dig, the backhanded compliment. Oh, a music theory major, I chirped. How interesting. I imagine it's hard to find a practical job with that, but it's so important to follow your passions when you're young. I'd smile, and Sophie, who was incredibly sharp, would just give the small, tight nod. I'd ask about her family, and when she mentioned her parents were divorced, I'd make a sympathetic sound and say, "Oh, you poor thing, a stable home is just so important." Every comment was a little paper cut. I was marking my territory, trying to show her and him that I was in charge. Mark pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Clara, what are you doing?" He whispered. "You're being awful to that poor girl." "I'm not," I hissed back. "I'm just getting to know her." "No," he said, his face grim. "You're trying to drive her away, and you're going to drive him away, too, if you're not careful." He was right, of course. The rest of the weekend was agony. Leo was quiet, his jaw tight. He and Sophie went for long walks, and I'd watch them from the kitchen window, feeling this bitter mix of resentment and fear. As they were leaving, I tried to make a clumsy peace offering. I handed Sophie a container of leftovers. "It was so lovely to meet you, dear," I said, my voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You have to make sure Leo is eating properly. He gets so thin." Leo stepped right between us and took the container. "He can take care of himself, Mom," he said, his voice flat. He didn't hug me goodbye. He just got in the car and left, leaving me on the porch in the cold November wind. I had tried to pull him closer, and instead, I just pushed him miles away. The biggest secret, the thing that I think really poisoned everything, was about money. It's always about money, isn't it? In his junior year, Leo and Sophie came up with an idea for an online platform for independent musicians. It was a brilliant concept. They had a business plan, a prototype, everything. They were on fire with a passion I hadn't seen in Leo in years. They needed seed money, about $20. Zero. They couldn't get a loan. They were just kids with a dream. So Leo came to us. He didn't ask for a handout. He presented it like a business proposal, right there at our dining room table. He was asking for an investment. Mark was skeptical. He saw the risk, but I saw something else. I saw a chance to be the hero, a chance to get back into his life in a way he couldn't refuse. I saw a way to support his dream, but on my terms. I convinced Mark, but my reasons weren't pure. The money came from a fund my parents had left me. I never told Leo that. I just made it sound like it was from our savings, so we gave him the money, and for a little while, it worked. He was so grateful. He called with upgrades, his voice buzzing with excitement. He was happy. I felt needed again, but I couldn't help myself. My support came with strings. I'd call and ask about the finances. I'd forward him articles about failed startups with a little note, just something to be aware of. I'd question his decisions. "Are you sure you should be targeting such a niche audience, honey?" The breaking point came about 6 months in. He called me, totally stressed. A key piece of software was more expensive than they planned for. He was venting, and instead of just listening, I saw my opening. "Well, Leo," I said, in that calm, reasonable voice I use when I'm about to be completely unreasonable. "This is what happens in the real world. Maybe if you'd gotten that business degree, you'd be better prepared." The silence on the other end was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that what this is about? You're holding this money over my head so you can say I told you so." "Of course not," I stammered. "I'm just trying to help." "No," he said, and I could practically hear a final puzzle piece clicking into place for him. "You're not helping. You're trying to control me. This money wasn't a gift. It was a leash." After that, he paid us back, every penny. I found out later Sophie had borrowed the money from her grandmother to do it. He sent it in a bank transfer, no note. He didn't want to owe me anything anymore. I had tried to buy my way back into his life, and instead, I had given him the money to buy his freedom from me. And if any of this feels familiar, If you've ever felt stuck in a family dynamic you just couldn't fix, please take a second to hit that like button. It really helps, and stick with me, because it gets worse before it gets better. The Thanksgiving after the money incident was the dress rehearsal for the Christmas disaster. Leo and Sophie had been distant for months. They weren't even planning on coming, but I laid the guilt on thick. It was emotional blackmail, pure and simple. They agreed to come, but only for the day. They showed up looking tense and tired. The air in the house was thick with everything we weren't saying. We were all trying to be on our best behavior, but the peace felt so fragile. My sister, Helen, was there. Helen is basically my harsher, more critical echo. She says the things I only think to Helen. After a couple glasses of wine, turned to Sophie. Sophie, she said, a little too loud. Clara tells me your little music business didn't quite take off. Such a shame. Most artists end up waiting. Tables, you know. I saw Leo's knuckles turn white around his fork. It's doing fine. And Helen, he said through gritted teeth, we're building it slowly. Oh, of course, Helen said, waving her hand. It's just that Clara worries so much. She put her whole life into you, Leo. She just wants to see you settle, not chasing some fantasy. I should have stopped her. I should have defended him. But a dark, ugly part of me felt a little bit vindicated. See, I'm not the only one. But my silence was my sin. My silence was a betrayal. Sophie, who had been quiet all day, put her fork down. She looked right at me. With all due respect, Helen, she said, her voice shaking but clear. Leo's success isn't for Clara or for you to define. He is building something he is proud of, and he's doing it without the kind of support that comes with strings attached. The table went silent. Helen's jaw dropped. Mark looked at me, begging me with his eyes, fix this. But I couldn't. I felt attacked in my own home. Sophie, that is incredibly rude, I said, my voice I scold. I know about support. She shot back, her voice getting stronger. Support is believing in someone. It's not trying to shape them into something they're not and then holding it against them when they refuse. That's when Leo stood up. He threw his napkin on his plate. That's it. We're done. He looked down at me, and his eyes were just filled with this profound disappointment that was so much worse than anger. You just don't get it, do you, Mom? You never will. He turned to Sophie. Let's go. They walked out. I just sat there, stunned, and heard the front door close. I didn't reach out to him after that. I waited for an apology that never came. And that brings us back to Christmas morning. I sent a few texts in that month of silence, thinking of you, unanswered. I clung to this idea that Christmas would fix it. The holiday magic, the tradition, surely that would be enough. I bought the keyboard, this huge peace offering, thinking a grand gesture could plaster over the cracks I'd spent years carving. I was delusional. The conversation right before he locked the door was short and brutal. He'd come out of his room, that morning looking exhausted. I cornered him by the tree, determined to force some holiday cheer. Merry Christmas, honey, I said, trying to hug him. He went stiff. I got you something really special. I just kept going, pointing to the box. I know you paid us back, but I wanted to show you that we support your music. Truly. He looked at the box, then at me. There was no gratitude, just pain. You think you can buy your way back in? He whispered. You think a keyboard erases everything? No, of course not. I stammered. I love you. It's Christmas, love. He let out this short, bitter laugh. You call it love. I call it an obligation, a transaction. I'm done playing. Mom, I'm done with the performance. He saw Sophie in the hallway behind me. She had her coat on. They had planned this. This was their escape. What's going on? I asked, turning to her. Are you leaving? We're leaving. Yes, Leo said, his voice hard. Sophie and I are driving to her grandmother's. We're going to spend Christmas with people who actually see us, who respect us. And that's when I said the stupid, panic, unforgivable thing. I looked at Sophie. So that's it. You're choosing her family over your own? Leo stepped in front of me. His face was a mask of fury and grief. Her family, he said, his voice shaking. They've shown me more genuine acceptance in 2 years than you have in my entire life. They don't attach conditions. He took a deep breath. This isn't a family. It's a hostage situation, and I am setting myself free. You are no longer family to me. Then he turned, walked to his room, and locked the door. The rest of the day was a blur. Mark tried to talk to him, but Leo wouldn't answer. Sophie left, giving me this look on her way out that wasn't hateful, just incredibly sad. Around 3 p.m., the lock clicked. Leo walked out with a backpack, didn't look at either of us, and left. He'd left the keyboard unopened by the door. The weeks that followed were the loneliest of my life. I replayed every conversation, every decision, seeing it all through this new, horrifyingly clear lens. I saw the well-intentioned mother, but I also saw the manipulator. I saw the protector, but I also saw the controller. The painful truth was that Leo hadn't just left. I had pushed him out. The resolution to this story isn't a neat one. It's been 8 months. Leo and I haven't spoken. He texts his dad sometimes. Short, polite messages. Mark tells me he and Sophie are still working on their music platform, that they moved into a small apartment, that he seems okay. I started going to therapy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. It's me, dismantling the entire identity I've built for myself as the perfect mother. It's about learning that real love isn't about control. It's about letting go. It's about wanting what's best for your child, even if it's not what you pictured. I don't know if Leo will ever forgive me. I have to accept that he might not. My healing can't depend on his forgiveness. I'm grieving the loss of my son, yes, but I'm also grieving the loss of the woman I thought I was. My therapist encouraged me to write him a letter, not to send it, not yet, but just to write it down, to say I'm sorry, that I see him, that I was wrong, and that I love him, no conditions, no strings attached. I keep it in my bedside table. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to send it. Maybe one day that door will creak open again. Until then, all I have is the silence and the hope that it won't be forever. So I want to ask you, and I really want you to tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were me? How would you have handled this? And if you were my son, could you ever forgive? Thank you for listening.